It is difficult to pinpoint the one biggest issue that public schools are dealing with, but when we look at the underlying issue that affects mostly everything else, there is only one answer. I interviewed Nancy de la Huerta to see what issue she feels affects her classroom the most. But first, here's a little background information on Mrs. de la Huerta. She has 3 degrees. She has her bachelor's in sociology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, her master's in curriculum and instruction and educational leadership from University of Illinois Chicago. Mrs. de la Huerta is in her 21st year of teaching, which all took place at Chicago Public Schools. She currently teaches at Stevenson Elementary School. Mrs. de la Huerta is currently the English language program teacher, which in most districts is known as the bilingual coordinator. Currently, Stevenson Elementary School has a bilingual population of about 490 pre-K through 8th, whose programs of instruction she is directly responsible for, but she only works directly with about 25 students who are newcomers because they need more native language instruction. The underlying issue that Mrs. de la Huerta believes is a core to many problems education faces is appropriate funding and allocation of funds. Mrs. de la Huerta states, "We have primary classrooms with over 30 students in them and not enough materials for all students to have their own books. Special education teachers have enormous caseloads and there is often not enough space in buildings to accommodate resource teachers with their own classrooms. In addition, many children are not being identified as needing specialized services because of the large class sizes." This made me reflect on my own experience as a student in Chicago Public Schools. Funding was always a big problem. It also made me question how students would be affected if education was better funded. The article "Does Money Matter in Education" by Bruce D. Baker helped to answer my question. In this article, the author discusses major studies on 3 specific topics. The article explained how money is important, especially how that money is used and how there needs to be a more efficient allocation of funds. The article states that money does matter. Schools and districts with more money clearly have a greater ability to provide higher quality, broader, and deeper educational opportunities to the children they serve. Furthermore, in the absence of money, or in the aftermath of deep cuts to existing funding, schools are unable to do many of the things they need to do in order to maintain quality educational opportunities. The author brings up great points. What we forgot to add was how and why different school districts have disproportionate funding. A lot of funding for schools comes from property taxes. So if you live in a poor neighborhood, you are more likely to go to an underfunded school. So this makes me question how and why many people believe that education is a great equalizer. An article by Bruce D. Baker, Danielle Ferry, and David G. Sciarra, titled "Mind the Gap: 20 Years of Progress and Retrenchment in School Funding and Achievement Gaps," focuses on different factors that play a role in the achievement gap, and one of those factors being funding. The article states, "State and federal policy focus on improving state finance systems to ensure equitable funding and improving access to resources for children from low-income families is a key strategy to improve outcomes and close achievement gaps." It is evident that we are not providing students with equitable funding. This affects the most vulnerable students, like those with special needs or English language learners. This makes me wonder how the state and federal government assess their needs and how much funding these students receive. Baker states, "Most funding for public education comes from state and local sources and is under the jurisdiction of state school finance systems. Therefore, states have the greatest control over whether local public schools have access to sufficient levels of resources and whether those resources are distributed equitably across children and settings. Fair and adequate funding of education is supposed to be one of the most important things that our children are entitled to. Yet it seems that instead of looking at solutions to help our public institutions, our policymakers are starting to see education as a business, and more our public funds are being funneled into private institutions, which leaves our public schools with less every year. Environment is key to learning, and better funding our students would create a better environment with more resources to assist them."